In 1973, Black Sabbath were getting ready to record their fifth studio album titled Sabbath Bloody Sabbath, but there were many problems that arose in the writing process. The band had problems with substance abuse. They were completely fatigued after that tour supporting their previous album, Volume 4, and even had problems with writer's block because they couldn't come up with any new ideas. But it wasn't until they went to this haunted castle to record where Tony Iommi came up with a guitar riff for Sabbath Bloody Sabbath, and the rest is history. In this video, I will be focusing on Sabbath Bloody Sabbath, the fifth studio album by Black Sabbath. It's celebrating its 50th anniversary. I couldn't find an exact release date. Some sources say November, some December, but that's not important. It was around this time. The story begins at the end of their world tour supporting Volume 4. They initially wanted to record an album that sounded just like that. So they went to the Record Plant Studios and they rented a house in Bel Air, but they couldn't come up with any ideas. This was due to substance abuse problems, and also they just needed a break. They were completely exhausted from the tour of Volume 4. They went months without being able to get anything down on paper, so they decided to go to the Clearwell Castle in England. This was when strange things started to happen. There were times when they would see people walking down the corridors and then no one would be there. They even went down into the dungeons that was very haunting and creepy. But it was there when Tony came up with a guitar riff for Sabbath Bloody Sabbath. That guitar riff is so iconic that many metal bands have both covered the song and even used it for inspiration for their work. The album can also be considered the last great Black Sabbath album with Ozzy Osbourne, and although that can be debated because the next album, Sabotage, was also very good, but according to Ozzy, this was the beginning of the end of the original lineup. There was a lot of problems with the band as well as drug abuse, and basically the band was not getting along. Let's talk about the artwork. This is one of the darkest album covers. You might not notice it at first glance because it's the front album cover is mostly these red tones and you might not notice what's going on. But if you look at it closely, you see this guy in this big bed with the number 666 on the headboard. There are these male and female demons and everybody is naked. And there's another image on the back where it's all blue and it shows a dying man surrounded by his loved ones and some lions. The back cover is more peaceful than the front cover, but either way, it's some really great artwork that was done by an illustrator whose name was Drew Struzan. Let's talk about the songs now. The band started to get more experimental. They used different instruments. For example, they wanted to use a sitar, and they also wanted to use bagpipes, but they couldn't really learn them quick enough. But they did buy a Moog synthesizer, and that was used in the riff for Who Are You? And I'll talk about that a little more later. Sabbath Bloody Sabbath is the first track. I think the first time I heard this song was on a compilation album that I had when I was young, but that was not what got me interested in this song. It wasn't until I heard the cover by the band Anthrax from their I'm the Man EP that I became interested in this album. So for that reason, I bought it when I was about 18 years old, and that kind of got me into heavy metal. I liked the song because the main riff was a precursor to thrash metal, but there were also a lot of different styles incorporated into the song, such as progressive rock and jazz. You can hear this if you listen closely to the song structure. Overall, it's a great song, and it has stood the test of time. Next is A National Acrobat. I like this song because it has this classic Tony Iommi style guitar riff in the intro, and the guitar tone is also a little different. The song is still heavy. The vocals by Ozzy sound great. You can hear when they mixed this song, they doubled his vocals in each channel in certain parts of the song. The breakdown that comes in at about 2.5 minutes is awesome because Tony uses the wah-wah effect in his guitar. Ozzy also has some echo effects in his vocals in some sections. There's also a part right at the 5-minute mark which gets very melodic. Overall, it's an awesome song. Fluff is an acoustic song. It's very soft. I've always loved this song. It's soft and relaxing. A nice contrast comes in after the two heavier songs. It's also a 4-minute song. A lot of metal bands like to include short instrumentals that are similar to this one on their albums, and I think that Black Sabbath paved the way for this. The song was named after a BBC radio disc jockey whose name was Alan Fluff Freeman because he was one of the few people to play their music on the radio. Next is Sabra Cadabra, and this is another song that has stood the test of time. It was covered by Metallica on their Garage Inc. covers album from the late 90s. The song has some cool guitar riffs. This is one of the more upbeat songs. It's not a very dark and heavy song like so many others, but this one has more of a progressive rock sound, especially after the 2-minute mark when they bring in the spacey keyboards and piano sounds. Killing Yourself to Live is next. This is a song that sounded like some of the songs from their albums after this, such as Sabotage. In other words, it shows the natural progression of the band. Don't get me wrong, the song still has some heavy Black Sabbath style riffs, but they are adding some components to their sound. The song is a hard rocker. I also like how the song goes through a lot of changes in the tempo and rhythm. Who Are You is a cool song because it's very trippy. It's a different type of song. They use the Moog synthesizer for the main riff, and you can hear the bass guitar up front. I've always loved the song because it's just very different. It made you feel like you were on a spaceship. It's a very unique song in the Black Sabbath discography, probably their closest song to the progressive rock at the time. Looking for Today's next, this was one of the songs that reminded me of their later 70s sound with albums like Never Say Die or Technical Ecstasy. More of a hard rock song, but still pretty cool. Sounds like there's some flute in the background, as if it were like Jethro Tull meets Black Sabbath. Still, it's a good song. Let me also mention the drumming towards the end of the song was very good. Spiral Architect is next, and this is the last song on the album. The song has an acoustic intro. You can tell that many metal bands in the 80s were inspired by this. The song is classic Sabbath, has slow and heavy guitar riffs. There's also a progressive rock sound with orchestral elements as well as the sound of soft 70s radio rock. It's a song that kind of has everything. It's also interesting that the lyrics are about how a person's experiences can shape someone's individual DNA. So that is all. Let me know your thoughts on Sabbath Bloody Sabbath. Where would you rank it in their discography? I would probably put it up high, probably in the top 5. I think it's an awesome album. I remember I played this one a lot during my freshman year in college. It's just a really great album. Check out my review of Volume 4, which I did last year. If you want some more information on what led up to the events, on what I talk about in this video, please like this video. It helps me with the YouTube algorithm. Please comment. Please subscribe if you're not already subscribed. I do rock and metal reviews and rankings and more. I will see you in the next one.